Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen says India has barred him from visiting occupied Kashmir. He's among 50 members of Congress who have expressed concern over human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. Speaking in Bulletin, Hollen said he wanted to visit the occupied region to see the ground realities. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Pakistan will facilitate any U.S. lawmaker who wants to visit Azad Kashmir. Qureshi said 8 million Kashmiris are living under siege for the last 62 days. He said the continuous curfew has resulted in a severe shortage of food and medicines in the valley. U.S. presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren has expressed concern about recent events in occupied Kashmir. In a tweet, she said the rights of the Kashmiri people must be respected. The Democratic Party leader pointed out India's communications blackout in the occupied valley. The U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations has also asked India to end its lockdown in occupied Kashmir. Kashmiris have been living under curfew since 5th of August. Thousands of people in Azad Kashmir have protested against India's illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir. The Freedom March, held mostly by youngsters, rallied towards the line of control along the Indian occupied valley. Conducted under the banner of Jammu Kashmir, a liberation front, the protesters chanted anti-India slogans. They also urged the UN to play its role in resolving the issue under Security Council resolutions. The curfew and the communications blackout has snapped the contact between families in Azad and occupied Kashmir. The draconian clampdown has resulted in a humanitarian crisis in the valley with a shortage of food and health necessities. A fact-finding mission says the women in IOK are living under a constant threat of molestation by Indian occupation forces. The 4-member women team from Women Against Sexual Violence and State Repression visited the valley from September the 23 to 28th. In its report, the team said women in the valley are sent to sleep in safe zones where raids by forces are not so frequent. The report said women are terrified of speaking out due to fear of attack and torture by Indian troops. It said the team visited different areas of Srinagar, Shupainia, Kupwara and Baramulla to understand the ground situation. The New Delhi imposed clampdown and communications blackout has entered 63rd consecutive day. An Indian soldier captured and released by Pakistan in 2016 has quit due to incessant harassment in the force. Chandu Shavan says since the return from Pakistan, he has been harassed and looked at with suspicion. The soldier said he sent the resignation letter to his unit commander in Ahmednagar in Maharashtra state. Pakistan Army captured Shavan 3 years ago when he crossed the LOC and was handed back to India after 4 months. The UN has called for an end to the senseless loss of life in Iraq. The death toll from anti-government protests has risen to 100. Head of the UN Assistance Mission for Iraq, Janine Hannes, says those responsible for the killings should be brought to justice. She said Iraq has experienced 5 days of unjustifiable violence, which must be stopped. Hannes said all parties must show restraint. But demonstrators say they will not back down from their stand against unemployment, poor public services and corruption. The Iraqi authorities have been trying to control the protesters through curfews and a communications blackout. In Libya, a drone strike at a Misrata airport has injured a civilian. City authorities say 2 planes on the tarmac were damaged in the attack. Flights have been cancelled at the airport. Government forces have blamed rebel commanders Khalifa Haftar's forces for the assault. The UN says 500 people have been killed since Haftar's forces launched an offensive to capture Tripoli on 4th of April. The working-level talks between North Korea and the US have ended with both the sides voicing conflicting assessments. North Korea said nuclear talks with the US have broken down. Talking to media in Stockholm, Chief negotiator Kim Myong-gil said he is displeased that the negotiations did not fulfill Pyongyang's expectations. But in a statement, U.S. State Department said the two sides had good discussions in Sweden that it intends to build on in 2 weeks. The meeting came days after North Korea tested a submarine-launched ballistic missile for the first time. This was the first formal working-level discussion after the failure of the Hanoi summit in February. China says it will foster a long-term, sound and stable relationship with North Korea. In an interview, Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to further strengthen bilateral relations with Pyongyang. President Xi Jinping said the two neighbors have played an important and positive role in maintaining regional peace and stability. In a letter, North Korea's Kim Jong-un said its invincible friendship with China will be immortal and a victory for socialism. North Korea was among the first countries to recognize People's Republic of China after its independence in 1949. Tunisians are voting today to elect a new parliament and a new prime minister. These are the country's third parliamentary polls after its successful transition to democracy following the 2011 revolution. More than 15,000 candidates are contesting for the assembly of the 217 seats. The party that secures over 109 seats in a single round of voting has the right to appoint a prime minister and form the government. Informal surveys show that Muslim Democratic Party and Nanda will lose ground to the new Kalb Tones party. The country's economy has struggled since long-time ruler Zainul Abidin bin Ali was removed from power. The elections come 2 weeks after the first round of presidential election that swept aside traditional political parties. Kosovo is voting for its fourth parliamentary elections in snap polls after Prime Minister Ramush Haradinaj stepped down in July. Haradinaj resigned after he was summoned before an International Court of Justice for War Crimes explanation. There are 5 main contenders competing for the top spot in the elections. Haradinaj was one of the commanders of the Kosovo Liberation Army that fought Serb forces during the independence war. In August, Kosovo's parliament voted to dissolve and snap elections were announced. Kosovo is troubled with corruption, unemployment and deteriorating relations with neighboring Serbia. Portuguese voters are casting their ballots to elect a new parliament. Opinion polls have pointed to the re-election of the ruling Socialist Party, but it is unclear if the Socialists will win enough seats to form a government without a coalition. They currently lead the ruling Garinonca coalition with support from the two far-left Eurosceptic parties. Prime Minister Antonio Costa says he wants enough numbers to govern without his Garinonca allies. The Prime Minister's campaign focused on economy and jobs. Unemployment has fallen from almost 14% to 6% under Costa's rule. In Cameroon, President Paul Biya has ordered the release of his rival Maurice Kamto as a goodwill gesture for national reconciliation. Biya is seeking to calm unrest stoked by a disputed presidential election last year. Kamto was arrested on insurrection charges in January after leading protests against the election results. Kamto finished as the runner-up to Biya in the election. Biya has been ruling Cameroon for 4 decades. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, has called for a probe into violence during protests in Hong Kong. Over 1,000 people have been wounded in the protests that started in June against an extradition bill. Thousands of citizens have protested against a ban on face masks. Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam has condemned the violent protests against the anti-mask law. Lam said extreme violence by protesters has justified her decision to invoke emergency powers.
There were terrible, violent incidents happened in all districts in Hong Kong last night. The extreme actions by mask rioters were shocking. This shows that public security in Hong Kong has been extensively jeopardized, which is a solid justification for the SAR government to invoke an emergency law to ban the face mask yesterday.
Russia says it will continue to bolster Venezuela's economy despite U.S. sanctions. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov is on a visit to Caracas to highlight Moscow's support for President Nicolas Maduro. Venezuelan Vice President Tariq al-Aissami thanked Moscow for facilitating oil shipments despite U.S. curbs. Borisov also met Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Talking to media after the meeting, Maduro said the two countries have agreed to strengthen bilateral economic bonds.
We have reviewed all the issues and we can say there are new economic ventures with technology, sharing, participation of Russian companies in all areas of strategic production of the country. We have renewed and advanced tremendously throughout the oil, gas and basic businesses.
Russia has given $17 billion in loans and credit lines to Venezuela since 2006. Moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accuses Congress members of harassing his department to obtain documents related to an impeachment probe. Talking to media in Greece, Pompeo said lawmakers are directly contacting State Department employees. Pompeo said he will not let that happen to his team. A Congress committee is holding an inquiry against President Donald Trump for seeking foreign help against his political rival Joe Biden. Earlier, Democrats accused Pompeo of obstructing the investigation. Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers have subpoenaed documents from the White House as part of their impeachment inquiry. It's a time for a short break, but coming up next in the bulletin. Exhibition titled "For Greatest Benefit to Humankind." And pandas live at center in southwest China. Welcome back. 6 people have been killed in 9 days from overdosing on fentanyl-laced drug in Washington's King County. Health officials say the death toll due to the country's worsening opioid crisis has reached 141 since June. Seattle Public Schools have distributed warnings to students and families about the risks of buying drug pills from online shops. Authorities have also declared the purchase of pills online as unsafe in Seattle and King County. Local media says 7 teenagers have been killed by fentanyl overdoses in the county since this year. Eight people have been killed by gunmen in an attack near northern Rwanda's Volcanoes National Park. Police say 18 others, mostly tourists, were injured in the attack. Tourism spokesman said the terrorists were carrying mainly crude weapons. In a statement, police said the security forces are trying to track down the attackers. The area has repeatedly been targeted by Rwandan rebels operating from the Democratic Republic of Congo. For over a century, Nobel Prizes have served the purpose of rewarding human discovery aimed at improving human life. An exhibition at the Nobel Prize Museum showcases all of these achievements. Find more in this report.
The Nobel Prize Museum exhibition showcases Nobel Prize-winning progress. The exhibition deals with environment and climate change, food, digital technology, medicine, and humanitarian aid.
The exhibition is called "For the Greatest Benefit to Humankind," and it's actually a thing that Alfred Nobel wrote in his will. And we are trying to make an exhibition about what that could be, and think about the past and see what it might end up in the future with.
The show exhibits items such as penicillin, the discovery awarded jointly to Ernst Boris Chain, Alexander Fleming, and Howard Walter Florey in 1945. It aims to instill in young people the idea that progress of humankind is based on further knowledge and progress.
I hope that the exhibition will convey the message that change is possible, that discoveries and efforts, human efforts, can really change the direction the world is moving in.
The exhibition also aims at renewing commitment humans have made to their world for the sole purpose of improving humankind.
312 giant pandas reside at a conservation and research center in southwest China. According to latest data, it is the world's largest giant panda group in captivity. This report has more.
Reproduction of captive pandas used to be a challenge, but efforts of a conservation center in China's Sichuan province over the years has paid off. The number of pandas in captivity has increased from 10 at the beginning to over 300 now.
Actually, in an overall perspective, it is a question to improve the level of scientific management, adopt a scientific way of thinking, and raise the pandas with a loving heart. So altogether, we have spent nearly 25 years to completely solve the three difficult problems in raising pandas.
The youngest panda cubs in the center are twins born in August this year.
Now the twins are 1 month old and all their physiological parameters are normal.
The pandas at the center account for over 50% of the world's total captive bred panda population.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.